and that's kind of been our mindset.
And that really has been just the kind of story of the season. I feel like Artie is this Bowling Green team just has never really been able to get momentum going throughout the whole year, but they haven't stopped fighting. It's just been kind of setback after setback for injuries and just tough situations for the team.
Definitely a lot of injuries, guys like Sam Towns, Yusuf Kayat, and more recently Trey Thomas with that broken leg. And then, like you said, they just can't build momentum so far ever since they got into the MAC schedule. Even before that, they had that 5-game losing stretch earlier in the MAC season. And then they haven't been able to get 2 wins together against the conference opponents. But in every game, you can see that they fight. They don't give up. They keep pushing. They keep moving forward. It's just a matter of, that starting to stop. But you can see that the talent in this team. You can see the fight every game. Guys like Javonte Campbell, Marcus Johnson, just trying to step up and make things happen.
Yeah, and I mean, it even dates back to before the season. You had Elijah Adams suffering a tragic event. He hasn't been with the team at all during this year. You talked about the guys that have been missing. Dejon Humphrey, Todd Simon talked about it after that win. We didn't really know what he was out with. Apparently it was a hernia, according to Simon. So for him to deal through that and come back to it, and he scored his 1,000th career collegiate point against Toledo on Friday. And then you've got guys like Jemai Felt that's been playing the whole season. He still looks like RoboCop out there, wearing all of the pads and braces. But I mean, I think the biggest moment of the game, of course, was the very end with Javonte Campbell. 1.6 seconds remaining, hits the game-winning shot. Can you take us through that, Artie?
Yeah, definitely. So BG it was a 68-67 game at the time. There were 15 seconds left on the clock. Javonte Campbell, he drove to the rim, missed the first shot. Marcus Johnson tried to tip it in twice, but the ball kind of ricocheted back after the second tip-in attempt, went right into the hands of Wilkins Jr. Exact. And Exact made the pass to Javonte Campbell to fly underneath the rim. Just one of the most electric plays of the season, or at least in my time here. And, Javonte Campbell, he did all that we didn't know the severity of his hand injury until Todd Simon said in the postgame, but he's been playing with a broken hand. So we talk about, the adversity they've been playing through. There's another player who's playing through injuries, hasn't been able to practice in a live practice since January 6th. So he's been going out there and playing with just mental preparation week in, week out.
Which is kind of insane to think about it, that you don't have a live practice with the team and you still go out and do what he does. I mean, 3 straight 20-point games now for Javonte Campbell. Came off the bench for the first time this season because Todd Simon talked about wanting to spread out that scoring because he moved Derek Butler back in the starting lineup with the absence of Trey Thomas. But Javonte Campbell finishes the game 23 points, has 3 assists, 3 rebounds, a block and a steal, 10 for 18 shooting from the field for Javonte Campbell. But I think you talked about this already on the call. The highlight play of that game, if you take out the Campbell make, of course, was the rebound by Exact. To be able to make that play happen. And he had a tremendous game, 12 rebounds, 5 offensive boards.
Oh, definitely. If he doesn't do that, then the Falcons just don't win the game because if he can't grab that ball, there were about 4 Toledo defenders surrounding him. So he was just in the perfect place to make that play, to make that pass, really. And he had a terrific game as well. Derek Butler also had a terrific game. He had 20 points. He scored 18 points in the first half. Played all 40 minutes of that game. So he was out there constantly. And Marcus Johnson, he had a bit of a quieter night. He had 10 points. John Humphrey, he had 8. Wilkins Jr. exactly said 4 points, but 12 rebounds, and 5 of them were offensive rebounds. So that helped BG win the rebounding battle against Toledo.
It definitely did, and that was a big thing that they did win the rebounding battle. They kind of won every category that we were looking at them to win already. They outshot Toledo from the field. They outshot them from 3. They led in fast break points, double Toledo's fast break points. We had been questioning their paint presence after the Kent State game when Kent State scored 50 points in the paint against them. BG outscores Toledo in the paint 38-24. The only real thing, I mean, they outscored on bench points 27-13. The only real thing Toledo won in was points off turnovers, and that was by a minimal amount, just a 3-pointer. So it was pretty, I mean, the score was close, but if you look at the numbers, Bowling Green dominated the metrics of the game.
Oh, definitely. It seemed like they were pretty locked in on all areas of their game. Todd Simon in the Kent State press conference, he said he wanted to see the team play a complete 40-minute game. And
I think we got that.
I think he definitely got that out of his team. There were some rough moments of that game where there were a little bit of rough stretches. Maybe they were a little bit slow at some points, but it was mostly a pretty complete game where they're all playing together. A pretty fast-paced offense against a really good Toledo defense, a decent Toledo defense, I should say, and they forced 8 turnovers over a team that historically or this season had not turned the ball over many times.
What was the most surprising part of the win for you?
I think the most surprising part of the win was just how fast the offense seemed to operate in that game. A lot of the time this season, it's been a pretty slow-paced offense, a lot of taking all the time on the shot clock. This time around, it seemed like they were more content with moving pretty fast-paced, moving up the court, trying to get more transition buckets, trying to stay one step ahead, trying not to wind down the shot clock, trying to score as many points as possible. I think that was surprising because it hasn't been something the team has done a lot this season, but they seem to execute it really well against the Rockets.
Now, I want to say this, and if anyone disagrees with this or agrees with this, chime in. But I'll preface it by saying I really like Trey Thomas as a player. I think he's a very solid player. I think it's so unfortunate the way that seemingly his collegiate career is going to ending with a broken leg, unable to play the rest of the season. But I'm not sure how much he fits into Todd Simon's offense. I know we've talked about this already. I think we saw it without him there. The offense just looked more fluid. It looked quicker. There wasn't as much resetting of the offense, which can be good at times. There's times that you need to reset that offense. But it seemed like the fast-paced offense that Todd Simon talked about wanting here at Bowling Green since his introductory press conference a couple years ago.
I fully agree with that. I think you watch Trey Thomas. He's a very good basketball player on his own. But putting him on that team, and you can tell he really soaks up time of possession.
He's a floor general.
Definitely, yeah.
And the issue with that is this team works really well when they strike fast. And I know we've all complained at different times, Marcus Johnson taking maybe a misplaced 3. A lot of those times are because the shot clock's winding down. They don't have the look they want because Trey Thomas was looking to dissect somebody maybe when he shouldn't have. And because of that, you have to take a last-second shot. You'd rather have the ball in Johnson's hands, and he misses, and then you give up a possession. But like you mentioned, Trey Thomas, great person, great player. Horrible the way it's looking like his college career ended, especially with how nobody expected. I mean, Todd Simon even said he was expecting Trey to go for the Toledo game before finding out it was a broken leg. So the fact that you lose him on this team and you're still able to beat Toledo, I think maybe there is a little bit of maybe the switch up might be a good thing for this team because they have to find a new way to win, and this new way to win might be a very big strength. But this is the first game without Thomas, so there's a few more big games left. You got to win as many as you can if you want to make the MAC tournament, and it's a big switch up to have late.
Yeah, and I think we also do have to think of the adrenaline part of it too with the team. I mean, 7,000 fans at Savage Arena will get you going, but it definitely did seem like that offense was a lot faster paced. And to what you're saying, Chaz, I think you look back, you can go look it up, some of Todd Simon's Southern Utah offenses, and they're a lot closer to an 8-second offense. It is, run 5-6 seconds off that shot clock and start looking for a shot immediately. A lot of fast-paced transition offense, fast break opportunities. And the offense this season has been very stagnant compared to those Southern Utah offenses or the Marcus Hill offense that we saw last year here at BG. But Chaz talked about it. This team needs to still get more wins to get into the MAC tournament. Right now, Bowling Green sits in 10th in the conference standings. They're 11-16 overall, 5-9 in the MAC. Central Michigan's also 5-9, but they have the tiebreaker over Bowling Green. So if the season were to end today, Central Michigan, Bowling Green would both be out in those 9 and 10 spots, and it would be Western Michigan sliding into the final spot of the tournament at 6 and 8.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have to win as many games as you can to close the season, but also you have to hope teams like Eastern Michigan, Ball State, you have to hope that they lose out, but you do play them. You play Eastern Michigan coming up on Tuesday, and then you play Ball State at the beginning of March on March 1st. So there's still a lot of time left, but you have to hope that those teams like Ball State, Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan, you got to hope they lose out so you can sneak in, plus Central Michigan losing out so you can get past them because they have the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I don't know if did anyone here see the end to the Eastern Michigan NIU game?
I did.
I did not.
I did.
So this is we've been talking about it. Basically, everything that Bowling Green needs to happen recently has not been happening. Eastern Michigan they were tied with Northern Illinois in the final seconds of the game. They had the ball in one of their who was it?
It was Jalen Terry.
Yeah, Jalen Terry. Like 5 steps inside half court, nailed a triple at the buzzer to beat Northern Illinois, a team that only has one conference win this season. Eastern Michigan gets their 7th conference win instead of being tied with Western Michigan for the 8th spot. So now makes it, instead of a 1-game separation, a 2-game separation for Bowling Green to catch that 8 seed. It's just unfortunate for Bowling Green in that. That's it's tough because the Falcons already have put themselves into the spot.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
like they still have. I feel like it's still their destiny to lose. I think if you win out, we've talked about it, if you win out, you make the tournament.
right.
So I feel like at this point, they don't really have anyone to blame but themselves if they end up missing the tournament, especially after beating Toledo the way they did.
I mean, you had that 5-game losing stretch early in the season. That hurt you more than anything. And then you lost.
And I think we agree, looking back at that, the Eastern Michigan game's the one that they're going to regret the most to start that streak.
I mean, 68-62 loss, Eastern Michigan at your home court at the Show Center, a game they were predicted to win coming into that game, and then you obviously lost, so that one hurts a lot. Also, the 90-71 loss to Central Michigan, the team right in front of you, that hurts a lot too.
Yeah.
That was the last game of the losing streak before they won against NIU 84-77. That one definitely hurt too. So there's a lot of moments in the season where you think, oh, if that would have gone differently, if that could have gone differently, they could have been in a different spot right now. You know, looking at the first game of the MAC schedule, 71-68 loss to Akron, a game where they were leading all game up until the last 2 minutes. So
Yeah.
that's another one you got to look back on and think, oh, maybe.
And you've got in there, too, you've got a few other top opponents in the MAC that you hung with. I mean, you hung with Miami for a little bit, and you hung with Ohio for a little bit. Those are that's 3 of the top 4 teams that you had a chance to win the game in the final 6 minutes and just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting in that that soundbite from Coach Simon where he mentions that the chemistry's there,
Yeah.
and that the team's playing as a whole, because, I mean, quite frankly, until very recently they weren't.
Yeah, they were bottom 15 in the country in assists per game.
And, I mean, I think that's just something that, I know we've talked about it on the show before. The fact that you have moments like that where the team's not clicking for a majority of the season, you are not working together as a well-flowing unit, and then you have the Butler moving to the second unit and a couple other key changes, and now the team's actually starting to function a lot better. And I know you've said this a lot, Tyler, a win on the season for Bowling Green would be to make the MAC tournament.
Oh, most definitely at this point.
And it's looking a lot better, but still, I mean, I can't help but have the lingering in my mind, is it too little too late? I mean, they've looked great the past 2 weeks. They have looked very good. You nearly take a game off Kent. You win the games you should win, and you lose the games that you also should lose.
Yeah, that's really been the story. And the big question mark here, you talked about, Chaz, is it too little too late? You're looking at a Bowling Green team that still has not won more than 2 games in a row this season, and they have not won back-to-back conference games this year. So it's still a team that is definitely facing an uphill battle when you look at what they've done up to this point.
Yeah, Tyler, I'm interested. We saw how powerful the offense was really in the Toledo game. Do you think that will transfer, especially with the change in rhythm that we saw with the offense? Will those changes translate into the next few games, do you think? And will that change translate into wins more likely than not in your point of view?
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. You do have to consider Toledo's not a great defense compared to a lot of teams in the MAC. They are a weaker defense this year. But I do think if it's going to be interesting to see what Simon does with the starting lineup, because at this point they are so thin at that guard position. He had Braylon Green start, but Green only played 7 minutes. It's going to be very interesting to see if he still brings one of Butler or Campbell off the bench. Because if you don't bring one of them off the bench, you have to wonder where does that scoring go when those guys have to go off the floor or when they do get fatigued. I think that's going to be the biggest question mark when considering if the offense can keep going.
How many minutes did Campbell play?
He played 26 minutes.
36.
36. Yeah, that's not really what you want to do consistently there.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of pitching
I mean, most of the starting
Butler
lineup has been
minute.
averaging like 30 minutes per game ever since all the injuries to Towns and Kayat.
If you look at the minutes against Toledo, you have Butler at 40, Campbell off the bench at 36, Humphrey started, had 37, Marcus had 37, Felt only played 17, but he picked up 4 personal fouls. He was in foul trouble fairly early in the game, and Exact played 31 minutes, and I expect his number of minutes to start going up to around that number pretty consistently with the impact that he's had. But I mean, that's 2 guys off the bench. He played the entire game.
Yeah, the stamina of, I would say, Campbell and Butler allows them to be able to play that high amount of minutes. But, adding, if Yo-Yo eventually can come back, maybe, the game after Eastern, if he can come back to just kind of relieve some of that pressure for the final 3 games, because they're going to be feeling it after Eastern if they're all playing 35, 40 minutes a game again.
Yeah, that's the part we talked about. The offense looked better without Trey.
Right.
But you lose the depth there. You just don't, outside of Butler, Dejan, and Javante, you're looking at Braylon Green and Jackson Pardon as your next 2 guards.
Right.
You're looking at a guy in Pardon who, honestly, you probably think Simon was trying to redshirt this year, and he's been thrown into 7 games at this point. And you have Braylon Green, a guy who has really struggled shooting this year, still just the sophomore, super athletic. Him or Felt, the 2 most athletic guys on the team, but he just has not been a good shooter and has not been consistent this year. Starts, only plays 7 minutes. So I think that's going to be the biggest question moving forward. You probably agree with that, Artie, is just the rotations that Simon's going to have to pull off here late in the season.
Definitely. It looks like it's going to go back to a 7-man rotation, which we saw earlier in the year when they were so just fatigued and Dejan was still hurt. So it looks like it's going to go back to that. They only played 7 against Toledo, who played 9 against them. So it looks like it's going to go back to that. And to Henry's point, you got to think fatigue is probably going to start setting in because most of these guys have been playing 30 minutes all season.
You can't play Derek Butler 40 minutes every game.
No,
we
definitely not.
saw what
That's
happened.
Not sustainable.
That's what happened in the 5-game losing streak too. Butler just got gassed out there.
And the thing about the guys that Todd Simon brings in as well is a lot of them they're not used to A, the D1 level, and B, they do struggle with injuries. They struggle with health, and I think. Honestly, I've got 2 points here. The first one being that you're right. They need a little bit more juice, maybe an extra body, and if Yo-Yo comes back, that would be awesome. The one thing I would say, though, is if Yusuf Kayat steps back into that lineup in any stretch, if it's in a starting role, if it's in a bench role, will that mess up any chemistry, do you think?
I mean, hopefully they played enough games at the beginning of the season where it's kind of just riding a bike again, but it kind of depends because it's been the lines have been so start and stop, having to switch so often that you would hope that just having another guy out on the court will just help you out just in general.
The other thing we do have to remember too is that as much as we want to hope that Yo-Yo comes back, we still haven't seen him dress for a game since he's been injured, so that kind of leaves a little the guy has been practicing, but, Campbell's not practicing and playing. Does not mean that he's anywhere near game shape ready. I personally had said that I thought if he comes back at some point in this regular season, it would be the Toledo game. And the fact that he did not dress in the Toledo game gets me a little hesitant for the rest of the season, to the point that I may be thinking that it may be okay, let's see if we can get in the tournament and then see if we can go then. But the other body I thought of that they still have is Preston Squire. Squire's been kind of moved out of the rotation, and he's a forward, so it doesn't really help you with that guard depth. He may become pretty big here because the team is so thin now that they can't even go small when Jemai or Zach get in foul trouble. So I have a feeling you may be seeing a little more Preston Squire in a couple of these games down the stretch. It'll all just be interesting to see.
The question is raised not just if either of them will play rotational minutes, it's how impactful Squire or Yo-Yo would be, especially when Yo-Yo comes back, if he's fully ready, and even if he's playing 10 minutes a game, how positively impactful would those minutes be? And I think you can ask the same question for Squire's minutes, if they would really be beneficial in the end.
I mean, Squire was playing towards the end, 7 minutes per game. Towards the end, when he was getting sort of rotated out of the rotation, so to speak. So, I mean, I feel like any minutes from anyone off the bench would help them out just a lot. Just considering how many minutes these guys are playing per game, and also Jemai Felt being in foul trouble a lot recently. He's only been playing 16, so that hurts you a lot too, because then it makes Wilkins play more minutes, and that's going to hurt your bench. So you get sub guys in and off as well.
Wilkins has really saved this team, though, when you look at it. To have Jemai only play 17 minutes and out-rebound Toledo because he grabs 12 boards, 5 on the offensive glass. Marcus Johnson has 3 offensive rebounds. You're starting to see with this team, even though they are shorthanded, these things that they were struggling at in that 5-game losing streak. Assist, another double-digit assist game. You out-rebound them. They've limited their turnovers for sure in the past few games. A lot of signs pointing positive for this team. I think what we're all getting at is just the question of how much gas do they have left in the tank, and is it enough to get there through this 4-game stretch. Your personal opinion, Artie, do you think this team has enough to get through the 4-game stretch? Do you think they have enough to motor it to Cleveland?
I think they have enough left in the tank to win a couple of games here to end the stretch. I don't know if they make the Cleveland, just because there are so many other teams in the conference. Eastern Michigan is building momentum. I don't know if things are going to play off well where Central is going to lose all their games or Eastern is going to lose all those games where they're going to be able to make it in. But I think they're going to be able to fight till the end. Like Simon says, they play through adversity, so I think they're going to be able to play through it, end the season on a high note, even if they don't make it to Cleveland.
That is fair. So the next 2 games up for Bowling Green for men's basketball before the next Zig Zone will air. As we mentioned, it's Eastern Michigan up in Ypsilanti, Michigan on Tuesday. That's a 6:30 p.m. tip. We will have a call of that game on Falcon Radio. Pre-game starting at 6:15 for that one. And then Ball State here at the Stroh Center. That'll be a 2 p.m. game on Saturday, March 1st. We will also have a call of that game on Falcon Radio. But those will be 2. I mean, at this point, every game for men's basketball is a huge game. Now, moving over to the other basketball, women's basketball also had a huge win. They also won the Battle of I-75, defeating Toledo at the Stroh Center, 81-72 on Saturday. Both teams avenging losses to their arch rival earlier in the season. We have Lucas Kleinmeyer here to tell us all about the major win for the women's basketball team.
Yeah, just a good weekend, though, for basketball all around for both men's and women's. But last night for women's was amazing. That was Caden Knapp and I were on the broadcast, and we talked about it. That was easily the best atmosphere for a game for women's this season at home. They've been on the road a lot this year, and some of the home games they've been good crowds, but nothing like last night. I think most of you guys would agree that anytime you play Toledo, when it's always packed, and no matter if you're in Bowling Green or Toledo, the atmosphere is always incredible, and it's good to have it at home and have the fans, have the student section packed out, and that made a huge difference in the game. The Falcons really fed off the crowd from the opening tip-off. I mean, first quarter again, they just jumped on Toledo right from the start, and they kind of used that momentum in the first quarter and just carried it throughout the rest of the game. They won the first quarter 25-14, and Toledo did have a lead a little bit at the start, but at the end, they won the quarter, and then they won the rest of the way through. Toledo had moments where they came back in it, but they never retook the lead, and that's the big thing in it. Yeah, Toledo won the second quarter, but Bowling Green always kept them in arm's length, which was very, very impressive to me. What's really impressive to me, too, is just how much different this team has been, not just the last time out against Toledo, but just how different they've been since they inserted Donahue into the lineup. They have been so much well-rounded, better defensively. I know we have a soundbite to play for what head coach Fred Chmiel said about Donahue last night, but she was fantastic, and we'll get to talk about him in a little bit, but if you want to play that soundbite real quick of Chmiel and the freshman from Fort Wayne, Indiana, how well she played last game.
There's very few players that you can see throughout the country that change the game defensively. She can change the game defensively. She goes out there, she disrupts, she gets deflection, she gets steals, she can take you out of your offense. I mean, it's a big game changer for us. And those steals often turn into transition points, which she's generating offense. Teams go at her on their offensive end, our defensive end, but she's tough. She's a tough kid. Like, she got some grit to her, and she doesn't back down. And that's big for us. We can play the smaller lineup. We can move faster. We can get downhill. We got great motion. So it's big for her to be out there.
And that was Fred Chmiel post-game talking about Janaea Donahue. And, I mean, hard to understate, like you said, how important of a move that's been. And it's kind of crazy to think about it. You look at the MAC standings, Bowling Green now the hottest team in the Mid-American Conference. They hold the longest active winning streak in the MAC at 4 games. That 4-game winning streak includes a 75-73 win out-of-conference game against Arkansas State, 70-55 win over Central Michigan at the Stroh Center, 70-63 win over Western Michigan and Kalamazoo, and, of course, the 9-point victory over Toledo at the Stroh Center.
Yeah, and they're still tied, like you mentioned, 6 in the MAC, Miami, and then both 8 and 6. But they still have that really important game against Kent State. It's their last regular season home game of the season. Kent State's 9-5, so currently in 4th place. So that's going to be a big game down the line. But going back to what Chmiel said about Donahue in this game, it's kind of, I was almost in awe of how experienced she looked on the floor. Like, you go to these big games and you can see some players, sometimes the moment's too big for them. Sometimes, they're freshmen, they're underclassmen, or they're coming from a different level, and, the game, it might just be a little too big for them because they're just not ready yet, whether it means physically or mentally or whatever. She was not. And you look at her stat line, 12 points, 8 steals. She was 2 steals away from tying the program record in steals in a game. The last time that happened was against Miami in 2004. So she was, again, 2 steals away from a double-double, even in that as well. She was incredible, and she's not going to let up the score sheet in terms of points, but the time she does score is really important.
Still add double-digit points, though, is extremely helpful, and to add 8 steals on the defensive end, you add in 2 assists and 4 rebounds and a block on defense. I don't think it's a crazy statement to say that she's by far the most well-rounded player on the team, and I mean, you could make the argument that she has been the MVP of the team this season. One could make the argument. I don't know if she'd be the favorite for it.
I would say you could make the argument in MAC play for sure.
Yeah.
I still think if you go full season, you probably lean towards Velasco. You definitely can with Nay, but I believe she's still second in the MAC in steals per game. I'll have to double check that. But it's crazy too because when a lot of people look at it from the stats, she's probably the 3rd best player that last game. I mean, Amy Velasco, 30 points, 5 assists. She's now the 8th.
She is now first in the MAC in steals with 61.
I mean, like, she's a freshman. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, man. I mean, I should have known she had 8 steals last night. She should have definitely moved up, so that's my bad.
Leads the conference in both steals and, like we were looking at before, steals per game,
yeah, too. So that's just unbelievable for her, and so happy to see her. And she's been the main difference since they lost to Toledo back in January. He took out Kieran McGuff and then reinserted Donahue. They played smaller, and they've been now, I want to say, won 4 in a row. If I went, so now 5-1 since her in the lineup now in the starting 5. I mean, she's been the main difference that's changed since that loss against Toledo. And, and she's only a freshman, which is amazing. And, I'm happy to see her development, see what she does from here on out. But, I was bringing up Amy Velasco. I mean, 30 points and then 5 assists. 9 for 9 from the free throw line, hit 3.
Leads the MAC in free throw percentage,
She
if I'm
does.
correct also.
Yep, leads the MAC free throw percentage, leads the MAC in minutes played, both average and total. Just incredible. And that was a performance for her that I'm happy it happened, because I always feel like her and Lexi Fleming are kind of like rock and roll a little bit. They kind of just go together. Fleming gets a lot of credit because Fleming is Fleming, and she's battled through injuries. She's
Fan
favorite leader on the team. Always just, fan favorite, like you said. But Amy Velasco is kind of that silent leader. She kind of leads by example. She's very quiet, but all the girls on the team look up to her, and the coaching staff takes note of that and knows that. Coach Maggie Lewis told us post-game on WBGU that, they asked her to do a lot, and they asked her to carry more than she's even expected, and more that she even probably wants. But she doesn't ever complain. She doesn't care. You look at the first half of the season before MAC play, when Lexi was still out, she was asked to carry the load. She had Erica Porter with her, but besides that, she had a second-year Paige Kohler with her and a bunch of new players. So she was asked to do a lot, and she still played incredible during that whole stretch. She scored in double figures 23 out of the 26 games this season. She's been unbelievable this year, and I'm happy she had that performance last night, because I think that crowd there kind of got reminded again of how important she was. Everyone knew how important she was and that she's a good player, but I think that was kind of served as a reminder of that. Yeah, she's still one of the best players, not on the team, but one of the best players in the MAC for sure.
And something that she did last night is move up in the leaderboards for points. Where's she sitting now, Lucas, and how high do you think realistically she has a chance at getting to in the regular season, and if Bowling Green was to make a run in the MAC tournament?
Yeah, so right now she sits in 8th in the all-time leading score. She just needed 2 points to get into the top 10, and she did that. She hit a big 3 in the first quarter, and then she moved up to 8. I have to look at the exact numbers, but I know we were looking at a little bit off air, and she can definitely get to Kate Octor and get to that 5th spot. I gotta look at the exact points, but it's well in reach. There's a big gap between the top 5 and then to the rest. Pulling up right now. I probably should have had this up already before, so that's my bad. But she definitely can do it. But the only problem is now there's only 4 games left. You probably are going to need a couple more games if she's going to want to get even higher than 5th and kind of give a little bit of breathing room between her and the other players above her or below her. Let's look at it right now. I have it up here right now. Okay, so right now Kate Octor has 1,580 points. Amy Velasco pass Francine Miller and Liz Hunt. I'm going to butcher that last name, so I'm not going to try. So she's right now in that 8th spot. She can totally pass Miller as well. Only needs a couple points, but with Octor and above, with Octor and Puthoff right now, Puthoff has 1,678 points, and she has 1,580, so there's kind of a big gap between them. So I think the highest she can probably get is 5th.
Yeah, looking at it, probably agree with that too. But I mean, you talked about it that I agree with you too. I don't think that fans sometimes remember exactly how good she is, because I think she has been overshadowed by players in the past, like the Alyssa Bretts of the world, or the Katie Hempflings, or the Lexi Flemings. But you look at Amy Velasco, and she has just been so consistent her entire Bowling Green career. She's constantly gotten better. She's evolved since she started here. And, I mean, to have a chance to be top 5 in scoring in program history is a huge achievement.
Yeah, and she has right now a career total of 1,453 points. Octor's has Miller and Hunt, I'm not going to pronounce the last name, but they have 1,574 and 1,522. So she's pretty close with them, and she can definitely pass them in the final 4 games. But you're probably going to need...
Yeah, to get to Octor right now, doing some quick math, you said 4 games left?
Yep.
She would need to average 31.8 points a game to reach her in the final 4. So, I mean, if you look, she's 127 points away. So let's say 2 tournament games, goes down to 21.2 points per game, which I think is definitely reachable.
It's reachable for sure, and I mean, we mentioned how many times she's scored in double figures this season, so it's definitely reachable. I mean, this season alone, she's averaging 16 points per game, so only needs a couple more from her season average. But you are right to go back to what you said, too. Sometimes she's been overshadowed, and this is because she's just quiet. She doesn't have a big vocal presence. And a lot of people forget, too, that WNIT run they made a couple years ago, obviously that was the run of the team was incredible with Hampton and Alyssa Brett, even Katie Hempfling's sign off as well. Lexi Fleming too really came to light that term as well. But Amy Velasco was very, very good that term as well. And she was a sophomore, and she was coming off the bench for a majority of that season because she was coming off an injury. And a lot of people don't realize that to her as well is she was a day one starter when she was a freshman, and then her sophomore year came off the bench 5 times out of their 38 games because she was recovering from an injury where she needed to have surgery. And then obviously last year she started all 31 games, and then she started every single game this year too. So she's also gone through adversity like a lot of other players. But that was a big night, a good night for her, reminder to get up to 8th in all-time scoring, and to have a big one over Toledo because that is the first win in the Fred Schmiel era against the Rockets.
We were calculating that. I think 1-10 he is against the top 4 teams in the MAC right now over his 2 years here, which, I mean, just to get that win and get over the hump with those big-time victories is huge for him and the team. But you mentioned the WNIT run there. You mentioned Nyla Hampton. That's something I was going to ask you about. I will always claim I think Nyla Hampton was the best player on that WNIT run. I think she was the most important, most impactful, and I think we can all agree that's kind of something this team was missing last year. They were missing a gritty player. Is Donahue the answer to fill kind of a role that Hampton had? And if so, how much do you think that can impact this team, and how dangerous can they be come tournament time?
Yes, and I think she can potentially be better than Hampton because she has offense to her game.
That's a bold statement for a 2-time MAC Defensive Player of the Year.
It's a huge statement because of how good Hampton is, but I think you and I would agree, and other people in the room as well, is Hampton didn't really have the offensive skill set to her game. She wasn't terrible offense. She can get you a couple points, but Donahue's scoring ability as just a freshman has been insane. And I think this year, I mean, she's going to be probably a MAC all-freshman team. And, I mean,
she's going to have a run at Defensive Player of the Year, too.
I was just about to say Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, if you lead the MAC in steals as a freshman, and then even down the line.
It's kind of crazy, too, thinking about it. I know, Artie, you have something to say. I'll give you a chance in a second here. But kind of crazy to think with both of the basketballs, we could be looking. There's a very real possibility both teams have a player that wins MAC Defensive Player of the Year. Javante Campbell for the men and Donahue for the women.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think just offensively, Donahue is a bit taller than Hampton was. Obviously, I remember Hampton was like 5'4", Donahue was about 5'8". So I think just that wise, I think it's a little easier to see like Donahue scoring like 10 points a night, 12 points a night, where Hampton was more like a defense oriented player, where Donahue's more both of that, but slightly more geared towards defense. So I think in a way she's more of an answer to. Like you need Tyler said, like the gritty player, the grittiness that this team was missing last season that they have now, and they've been much better for it since he's been put in the lineup.
I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Artie. Hampton's actually listed at 5'7". So put some respect on her name.
I should. I thought she was shorter.
I do agree though with Artie
but you
saying
do have a good point,
she
though.
plays a lot smaller.
Yes.
Than her height is,
Yes.
especially offensively.
Yes.
I think we've all seen the evolution of Donahue throughout the season. She's just got more comfortable on that offensive end. But looking at the remaining schedule, Lucas, this team has upcoming still. They have Ohio, just 4-10 in conference play. They have them at home. Then they go to DeKalb to take on Northern Illinois. They're just 5-9 in conference play. And then you get, to end the season, a big test against Kent State, a big game against Kent State. They're 9-5 in conference play, just above Bowling Green, a couple spots. Then you end the season, Eastern Michigan, they have just one conference win. How important is that Kent State game going to be? Because you look at the other 3, they feel like they should be wins. If those 3 are wins, how high do you think this team could get depending on that Kent State game?
Yeah, that Kent State game's everything because of, you just mentioned the 4 games they have left. I mean, Eastern Michigan is, they are in a dark
in
dark
both
place.
Men's and women's, it appears.
Yes, dark place. So you have that. You have Ohio coming up on senior night this Wednesday. I Ohio's, that's another game that should be a win. And then at NIU as well, it is on the road, but Bowling Green, those road struggles have completely turned around as of late, and they've been much better on the road. So you're right. Those are 3 games that all should be wins. And if you get all 3 of those,
yeah, if you look at those games before we get to the Kent State one, do any of those stick out to you as trap games for this team? Because this team has had losses that we didn't think would be losses. Do any of those scare you at all?
The NIU game could be a trap game just because they're still fighting for that 8th spot in the MAC, so they still have stuff to play for. You look at, Ohio still technically is alive, but a lot of those other teams, they don't seem to have that energy and that life in them like NIU had. NIU is one of the top 3-point shooting teams in the MAC still somehow, but they're not gonna go down without swinging. I'll probably double check that as well. But last time they had a weird stat where they were top in the MAC. For some case, I could be way off on that, but they're still 5-9 in conference play. So, and the 8th spot is Western Michigan is 6-8. So they're just 1 game out. So all they need is 1 game to go their way to get into the tournament. So that could be a trap game, but.
Yeah, right now Eastern may have fallen since you last looked. They're 10th in the MAC in 3-point shooting. Looks like.
Oh no, it's not NIU.
Oh, NIU. My bad. There. Yeah, you're right then. 36.9% from 3. What is that?
I don't know how because of how they played last time against Bowling Green. I don't know how. But hey, good for them.
Yeah,
yeah,
they've made the 3rd most threes in the MAC too.
Yeah. But no, that Kent State game's everything, and I know you and Caden were on the call for that MAC opener in Kent, and that was, for a lot of people's money, Kent State is the most well-rounded team in the MAC, and they are definitely in contention to win at least the MAC tournament. Regular season's probably out of the reach at this point.
I think so.
It's going to be a Ball State Buffalo down to those 2, and that's probably they play one more time too, so that's going to be probably for the conference in a week or so. But they're still a very, very down team.
Todd Starkey's a really good head coach.
Very good head coach. Jenna Botch is very good. Just all around solid team. Deanna Gray is still doing really good for that team as well. And they won the tournament last year, so they can obviously do it again. That's everything. And I think now that they beat Toledo, a team that just beat Ball State and handed at that time their first MAC loss of the season. Ball State did lose again. They lost to Kent State yesterday as well, so now they have back-to-back losses, which puts Buffalo 1 game behind them for the regular season title. But if you beat Toledo at home, you're at home again against Kent State, you have the first game to build off on, right the wrongs, and you can beat them. I would love to see it again. Kent State obviously would be favored, and I don't think that's wrong, but that's a big game because if you look at that, honestly, if they went out, let's just say they went out and they win 4 straight, go 12-6 in MAC play. That's 18-11 on the year. You're looking at top 4. You're looking at probably that 4th spot, depending on what Toledo does, and maybe get the 3rd. I think that's kind of dreamy a little bit, but you're looking at top 4, and you finish that 4th spot. That's good for Shamil, and obviously. I think we've talked about this before. It doesn't really matter because it's a neutral site in Cleveland, so it's more so based on matchups more so than actual seeding. But it's good for the program. Good for the program way to end off on that stretch.
So do you think that 4 spot's the most likely, 4-5, depending on that Kent State game?
Yeah, I think, the Miami's interesting too because they're both tied at 8-6, and that's going to look back as one of those losses that they wish they had back because I do think Miami's a very good team. They're a much better team than last year, but I kind of wish they had a second game against them this year because I do think if they played Miami again, this time at home, they have a very good chance of winning. Miami's got Eastern, Ohio, Central, and NIU to close out. They don't really have a tough schedule. You could see Central maybe getting over Miami, but they got to need to drop one of those games in order for BG to leapfrog them. So yeah, I think that 4 or 5 spot kind of hanging around. If I had to pick, I do think they'll get 5th. Which is what they were last year, I do believe, and they played number 4 Buffalo. So you're looking at about the same, which I don't think would be a bad thing, considering how they started out in the MAC and how kind of hot and cold they've been. But they've been on a good stretch, and this is when you want to be playing your best basketball of the season. You're on a 4-game winning streak, you have 4 games left, win most of them out, so you have the momentum heading into Cleveland.
And one more I'll throw over to you before we head into our trivia question. For the top of the hour.
Henry's excited.
What's been the most surprising part to you of this team's recent success? Because, they were in a stretch there before this winning streak where, they were kind of just going back and forth. They were teetering. They didn't really have any solid momentum going. Now they've won 4 in a row. What's been the biggest surprise to you?
There's been a lot of negative surprises, to be honest with you. But honestly, if I had to, one of the main surprises that's given them this winning streak so far this season, if I had to pick a player, it'd be Donahue. It would be Donahue again because of just how mature she looks for just as a freshman. She's only a freshman, and she's been incredible. And I think even the coaching staff is probably like, oh, we didn't expect this of her because she lost her starting spot, and got her starting spot right back. So that's been a big surprise as well. I would say the turnovers, too. They cut down the turnovers a lot. They still turn the ball over. They still have double-digit turnovers for Toledo, but nowhere near as bad as it was last season, and especially the first half of this season. The turnovers have been cut down a lot, and especially the turnovers have been cut down in key moments. They're not turning the ball over towards the end of quarters. They're finishing out quarters and finishing out games a lot better. I guess that's a surprise for me, but I mean, it's been a big positive and a big reason why the team as a whole has been able to get on this winning streak is the ability to close out games. And also, I will mention this as well, since Toledo and also that first loss against Western Michigan, Shamil both talked about them not being disciplined enough. Since he said that, they've been very disciplined, and they've limited fouls, and they've been very, very smart on the basketball floor throughout this entire winning streak.
Good stuff on both men's and women's basketball. So we will take a quick break. When we come back, we will have our trivia question. I'll pose it here right before we go to break. Give you guys a minute or two to ponder over it. We just had the Miracle on Ice 45th anniversary yesterday. I don't know if you guys were aware of that. So we are at Bowling Green. Bowling Green is a hockey town. Lake Placid in 1980. The Falcons had 2 hockey players play for Team USA in the Olympics. Can anyone name the 2 players that were on the Olympic team? Ponder over that for a couple minutes. When we come back, we will have the answer to that trivia question. You're listening to the Zig Zone here on WBGU 88.1 FM.
BGSU baseball heads west to battle Butler on Tuesday, February 25th. Tune in to Falcon Media Sports Network's Tyler Kavlitz and Henry Costco for the first baseball broadcast of the season, with pregame beginning at 2:40 and first pitch at 3 p.m. on WBGU 88.1 FM.
BGSU women's track and field set more program records in the GVSU Big Meet on Valentine's Day weekend. The Falcons opened up on Friday with a record-breaking 800-meter run by freshman Reese Riemann that finished at 2:08.36, 1/100th of a second ahead of BGSU Hall of Famer Tracy Gerke's record set in 1988. Junior distance runner Kylie Cubison, running a 4:42.53 in the mile invite heat, got a mark that was nearly 4 seconds above Riemann's previous record set at the Mayo Invitational 2 weeks prior. On Saturday, the Falcons distance relay medley squad of Kirsten Franklin, Rachel Hoover, Riemann, and Cubison broke the record set 26 years prior with a time of 11:21.85. This has been 60 Seconds in Falcon Athletics.
Back here on the Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM. Make sure to head over to bgfalconmedia.com to see all of the content by Falcon Media Sports Network and the rest of the BG Falcon Media. You can also go to the BG Falcon Media YouTube channel. There you can see all of Falcon Media Sports Network's broadcast, highlight videos, and much, much more, including press conferences. Been uploading quite a bit of those this year, so a bunch of content over on at those 2 places. But before we went off air, I posed our trivia question for today. 1980 Lake Placid. Yesterday was the 45th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice. Bowling Green had 2 hockey players on that team and looking for the two names of those two players. I'll start to my right with Lucas and go to the left. Lucas, do you have anyone?
This is such a... Who gave you this question? Is this you?
This was Ben. I really like the question.
Okay,
So this
well,
is
I
our
said
very
it
own Ben Korak, voice of Falcon Hockey.
I said it during break, just Mark Johnson and Mark Wells, because of the people
Okay.
that came up on Google.
You looked it up. Nice.
I can't name play. I didn't
Nice.
watch. I haven't watched.
Well,
the movie since
I
was
mean,
like
at least
7.
go down.
We all have our
honorably.
computers in front of us. I mean,
I was
Mark
going
Johnson,
by
Mark
trust.
Wells, there.
Okay, Mark Johnson, Mark Wells. Artie?
dude, okay, the only hockey players I can think of at the moment are Blackhawks players from the 2010s, and then
Well,
Casey
maybe.
Jones from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and one of those people is
Great
even real.
Great pull.
Dude, what is
We'll
it
see
like?
if Artie has any of those, right?
I love that. He goes Miracle on Ice, and you go to Casey Jones from Teenage
Okay,
Mutant Ninja Turtles.
but when I think of hockey, I automatically think of that. If I'm being honest,
Chaz?
I like the Mark Wells pull. That's a good pull.
Gee, I wonder why.
We don't know if it's correct or not
But
yet.
I like it. And then the second one, I've heard Ben talk about like the good players. Is it like Ken Morrow?
Short-circuiting
Is it Ken Morrow?
Okay.
Your ability to not act like
Henry?
you looked this up is incredible.
Henry?
Yeah, the one I thought was Mark Wells, but
Mark Wells.
I didn't.
I
had
feel
to
like
Google
so.
the other one.
I feel like Mark Wells is the common name, so Mark Wells was one of them.
Okay, look at that.
The other one was Ken Morrow.
Look at that.
Yeah. So.
Completely off the dome. Wow.
Wow.
Completely, completely.
We've
I
just
mean,
been swooped.
That was
Swoop
a
in next
very good
time.
trivia question, and I was hoping that you guys would go off the dome with that.
I
I'm
did.
mildly disappointed.
I went off the top.
I got it
I
right,
went down on
Tyler.
my sword.
Yeah, he got it right. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I
Completely.
like genuinely. I didn't look it up.
Well,
Tyler?
if you did, good job. Ben will be happy because, do I have it here? Because Ben put out a pretty searing statement.
Tyler,
Every BG sports fan should know, according to Ben Korak. So,
Well, if it's according to Ben Korak, then it should be true. Then
ask him who our Saturday starter is for baseball.
I hope Ben heard that. By the way,
we'll see if you did.
I miss Ben.
So, transitioning from the Miracle of Ice into BG hockey, they had a tough weekend, to say the least. The hockey team did. Came in with high hopes against Bemidji State over in Minnesota, and they ended up getting just 1 point. They lost 3-2 on Friday, and then lost in overtime 2-1. A goal scored against them with the final 10 seconds of that game sent it into overtime. A controversial one, with the goal being moved. Willie doesn't challenge it. Willie ends up challenging the goal in overtime. Unsuccessful there. Bemidji State wins. So we do have, since they're not in here with us right now and they cannot call in, Ben Korak and Sean Conley were on the call in Minnesota, and they are on their way or in the sky currently at about 40,000 feet in an airplane. So we do have a little bit of their post game from Saturday night last night on Falcon Radio. Here is Ben and Sean talking about the game and the series.
Back here in the Sanford Center in Bemidji, Minnesota, an unsuccessful final road trip of the regular season for Bowling Green. They drop 5 points to Bemidji State, an overtime winner by Adam Fleming in the second game, and a first game regulation win for the Beavers, 3-2 on a game winner by Jackson Judding. Sean is, we haven't been able to say that Bowling Green has played a bad weekend pretty much since the turn of the year. I mean, they played good weekend every time. I think you can chalk this one up as a bad weekend for Bowling Green, both on the outcomes and the gameplay as well.
Yeah, I would say that this is probably, I can't remember exactly too much in that, first stretch of the season, but definitely, it obviously all comes down to, how you end the season, and this definitely might be one of those weekends that you look back on and hope you at least got, at least back up to 500, and you were 10 seconds away from that on the weekend. But, a little, you now question what's, if you challenge that one at the end, would that have been, changed it? I want to see the replay a little more. We only saw one replay of it. Obviously we'll probably look at it off air, see if exactly what it was. But, it comes down to that. Should you have challenged or should you have not? And then it's like, I understood the challenge in overtime. That's really more of just a Hail Mary. But, yeah, it just an unsuccessful weekend, and it didn't came at a could come at a worse time.
I think Sean summed it up pretty well there at the end of that soundbite from them. That this couldn't have come at a worse time for Bowling Green. You look at the standings now, the Falcons have dropped to the 4th spot in terms of winning percentage, just below Michigan Tech, just above St. Thomas. So they are now on the brink of not having a home playoff game for the Mason Cup. And he also said not worst case scenario. They did get a point, but pretty tough weekend for the hockey team and for hockey fans here at Bowling Green.
It is, honestly. It's really worrisome. I mean, at least for me, I'm not the biggest hockey guy, and I know that might be blasphemy coming out of a hockey town that such as Bowling Green, but
don't let anyone in Bowling Green hear that, Chaz.
Well, too bad we're on the radio waves. But I really do think that Rashawn's right. It's not worst case scenario, but it's pretty close. I mean, you get 1 point out of 6 against Bemidji State, who was 8th in the CCHA standings before they matched up against the Falcons. Now they're sitting at 6th. So, A, you help Bemidji out a little bit, and B, now you've got St. Thomas clicking at your heels. They're just 2 points behind you in points percentage. BG have 40, St. Thomas have 38, and then if you give that up, then it's like the whole point of bringing Willie into the building was what is going to happen come playoff time. The big qualm against Ty Agner was the playoffs show up and the Falcons don't. They tend to peter off towards the end of the regular season and going into Mason Cup CCHA conference play. But the big issue now is that if you're Bowling Green, your backs are now really up against the wall. Now you are going up against a 9th ranked, is that 9th? No, 8th, excuse me, 8th ranked Lake Superior State. So it's not worst case scenario because you have to play them, but still I think it can turn bad if you end up maybe losing a game in regulation to them and only pulling out 3 points instead of 6 that you should. And yeah, I think especially it's really big now looking at this Lake Superior State game, because for the past month a home playoff game was kind of right in front of you, and now it's fading away right before the Mason Cup.
Yeah, and looking at the team stats for this weekend, I think the most concerning part to me is, this team's been aggressive all year. It's kind of what we've liked on offense. It's been a lot more aggressive offense than we had with Ty Agner. You look at it, you did have a slight lead in shots for the first game, 24-19. You got outshot by 10 in the final game, 33-23. And you weren't great in power plays, had just 1 power play goal on the weekend. You had just 1 power play opportunity on Saturday, and you got just 2 shots off on it. And looking back on Friday, they had 3 power plays, only able to get 4 shots off. They do get a goal on 1 of them, but Bemidji State gets a goal on 2 out of their 4. So it's like that. That's just a little concerning with the team.
It's concerning too, but it's also because they've been usually good in the power play this year until as of late, which is kind of crazy. And we talked about it a little bit too. Is with Ben, I think it was the last time we were all on the Zig Zone. It had to be a couple weeks ago, but is the one underlying concern being that they're getting all these offensive opportunities, they're getting all these shots on net, and they're not finding the back of the net. They have run into a couple of really good goaltenders. I think it's safe to say Josh Cote, Alex Tracy are the best goaltenders, not only in the CCHA, but some of the best goaltenders in the country. But they had incredible performances against Bowling Green, some of their best performances all season. And it wasn't just a one series, like a one-off of this happening. So that was a little bit of a concern kind of living in the back of my mind was, can they get off to good starts, but can they also put the puck in the net more consistently? And it sounded like that was kind of the case a little bit, at least in one of the games this weekend, was they had the chances and they just couldn't score and find multiple goals. And I think it's also worth to note, too, the first series they played Bemidji State this season, they did win, and they had a tie, then a shootout loss against Bemidji State. But the first time they played Bemidji State, they won 4-3 in overtime, so a high-scoring game, and then they tied 4-4, had a shootout loss, 2-0. So Bemidji State gave Bowling Green a little bit of trouble, especially on the offensive end. And you look at this weekend, too. They put 5 goals past Bowling Green in 2 games. So the Beavers have a very good attack. So disappointing weekend. I think that's something to chop it up as well, because considering just how well both basketball teams played, I know there's other programs at BG that didn't do as great as well. But, I think it's just really disappointing. But it could be even a wake-up call for this team towards the end of the season. You have one home series left against Lake Superior State, like Chaz mentioned. Team's second to last in the CCHA, and it's a good opportunity. If you take care of business at home, you get those 2 wins, you'll probably find yourself at least in that 4th spot. You'll probably get a home playoff game.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. I mean, you still have 2 more games and an opportunity to get some points to finish out your season, maybe get yourself up a bit in the rankings to, close it out so you can get a better standing when come playoff time. Like Chaz mentioned, like the big reason behind the signing for Willie was, what's going to happen in playoff time. So there's still that to be seen, what happens in the CCHA playoffs.
The one thing to remember here for the hockey team, although they do have maybe a loss of momentum between the hot streak that they had before the USA U18 loss last week, Bemidji State is still a solid team. This is a team that made the Mason Cup, hosted the Mason Cup final last year, and they're obviously able to beat any team at any given point, although they have had a rough year. But going into this last week, Bowling Green is favored to, I think, win both, or at least get points overall the weekend here against Lake Superior State, while Michigan Tech has to deal with St. Thomas here coming up on the road for them. And so Bowling Green and Michigan Tech are tied for 3rd right now, and I think the favor will go to BG in terms of if they're going to pull out that 3 seed here for the playoffs.
Yeah, and we don't have Ben really here to ask him, but let's see what you guys think. It's kind of feeling like it would be a little bit of a letdown against Lake Superior State not to come away with 6 points. I feel like it's right there for you to win both those games outright. If either of them, if you lose points going into overtime, or you were to drop one of those games, I feel like that'd be a major disappointment for this team.
I'd put it this way. I think it's more so the biggest disappointment would come if you are outscored by 2 points against St. Thomas, because St. Thomas also will have a series going on. Because in any case, like Henry said, Bemidji State is a good team. They had a down year. Lake Superior State, a little bit worse wise, but still, I mean, in hockey, all it takes is one misplaced leg, one misplaced arm, and there's a goal that slides your way or against you. So I think as long as you stay ahead of St. Thomas, you can't be upset. I know Lake Superior is towards the bottom of the standings, but with how hockey works, you can never count out any team, and especially the fact that the CCHA is extremely competitive.
Definitely, it is just kind of crazy looking back on it. You had that big hot streak for this team. Last couple of weeks, you split a pair against St. Thomas at home, lose that final one by 1 goal. It does feel like, I don't think any of us really thought much of the USA hockey game, but it does feel like a little bit of a momentum killer in there. Getting that loss, like just filler, I think looking back, it's like, doesn't affect any of the standings, but I don't think it helped team morale in any way.
The thing about that is it's not really about the result, more or less. It was about kind of how that game went, getting kind of beat down by players that are 3-4 years younger than you, regardless if it's an exhibition or not.
Even more, because a lot of these hockey guys are not just, normal college age. A lot of them go on the amateur circuit before getting up here.
Most of them are in their 20s, 22, 23, 24 for some of them. And I mean, playing a team like I can imagine, as a player, if you're in high school playing against a 15U team, which is almost the equivalent of this, how tough that would feel as a player. So, I mean, obviously these are professionals, more or less. They know how to use or know how to adapt to this sort of situation, but it's just something to take
think the timing of the game was really weird. It's in your final stretch of the season, and it comes in, mid-February. I think the timing was kind of a little bit unfortunate, too, but I think Tyler's original question is right. I think you need anything less than 6 points, I think, is not a successful weekend, considering that you beat Lake Superior State 3-0 and then 3-1 earlier in the season, back on January 3rd and 4th on the road, and so now you're coming back home It's senior night, I believe, the second game. I want to check. Yeah, senior night's the second game. You're at home. You want to make the slate a difficult place to play. So I think anything less than 6 points there and not getting yourself full confidence going into the Mason Cup would be a disappointment, and also something that BG fans would be a little bit worried about, especially if you head into the quarterfinals and you have to go on the road to, look at the standings. It would probably be St. Thomas if they were to switch, but you never know. Going on the road is not a good thing. You'd rather be at home.
And I do kind of want to build on that because I think you're right. The one thing about Lake Superior State, though, compared to everything else, is that Lake Superior State, they have 32 points. It's not like Lake Superior State and Northern Michigan have 14 points. Right above them is Lake Superior State. They've nearly, this is a lot of rounding, but they've nearly doubled them. Or actually, over doubled them. And then right next to them is Ferris State, who is tied with them, but they have the tiebreaker, and then Bemidji. So, as a whole, I think you're right. I think 6 points, you have to come away with it. But going back to what we said with momentum, too, the Team USA thing, that's a game that you are going up against some of the top talent, or yes, the top talent, young talent in the country. But more so, before that, they had that game against St. Thomas at the Slater that was... Willie didn't act like it was a deflator, but now that we're looking at it 2 weeks down the line, was it a game that, even though St. Thomas hit the backup goalie had the game of his life, is that something that carried on a little bit more than you'd think, and especially with injuries to Stover?
I will say, too, Chaz, you do have a little bit of a valid point because Lake Superior State has a better away record than they do home. At home, they're 4-10-1. Away, they're 7-8-1. So it's definitely not anything given that they're going to just walk in and get all 6 points against Lake Superior State. So I think that's definitely a good point to bring up, along with, too, the goaltenders just staying on their heads through all these games, and maybe that's lingering in the back of their minds, at least the attackers.
You kind of have to end the season with at least one win. If you count the USA hockey game, you've lost 4 games in a row heading into the final stretch of the season. So you definitely got to sort of just pull it together and for your final home series of the week.
This is kind of interesting looking at this standings page. And I think this speaks to some of the troubles this team's had with finishing these tight games. 5 overtime games for the Falcons this year. That's the most in the conference. Minnesota State has 4. Bemidji State has 4. And Lake Superior State has 4. 2 of those 3 teams have a winning record. Minnesota State's 3-1. Bemidji State's 3-1. Lake Superior State's 0-4. Bowling Green's 2-3. That 5 overtime games is, doesn't seem like a lot sometimes when you go into overtime losing a point or 2. But when you add that up 5 times, that's quite the difference for the team.
It wears on you, too. Depending
definitely.
on the minutes you play, it's going to wear on your skaters, on the ice. Obviously you could rotate. It gets less players on the ice and everything, but it wears on you, depending on who's out there, and you're obviously going to put the same bunch of players.
It's got to mentally drain you, too, to keep going to overtimes and, just like...
especially for your key players. You're going to put her out there. You're going to put Strumberg out there. You're going to put Norris out there. You'll put Duran out there. Maybe Maxwell Martin gets out there. But
it's not like you're playing your 4th, 5th lines, in overtime. So
you're putting on your best players during that overtime period because it's going to give you the best chance to win. So, like you said, mentally draining, physically draining. Do that 5 times this season, and they have 2 more games left. That could catch up onto you sometime. It's like what we're saying in men's basketball this season. You have 7 healthy players. If your guys are averaging 30-plus minutes a game or playing 40 minutes, they're going to get worn down. Trey Thomas, look what happened to him now. He's playing nearly the entire game throughout this season, and, your body breaks down on you, and it's unfortunate, but that's sports. That's professional sports. It just happens. Your body's not meant to do this night in and night out. That's why you train.
Yeah, and we'll see how the Falcons team responds. I don't think they're going to be happy, to say the least, after the way that end of the game went with the questionable goal to end regulation and then falling in overtime. You'd have to imagine Willie's going to light something under him here. And
that's the best response you can have, is if Willie kind of lays into them a little bit, or at least just gets them motivated.
They're hockey players. It's
what they do.
This is what they do.
That's what they do, man.
Now I want to go around the table here a little bit to wrap up hockey discussion. What do you want to see from this Bowling Green team in the final series? Could be results wise, could be something on the ice. What are you looking for to see out of this Bowling Green team in the final series before we head to the Mason Cup, and hopefully a Mason Cup quarterfinal round in Bowling Green?
I want to see goals, but more so I want to see goals in bunches. They had no trouble putting the puck in the net early this season, and it's kind of died off a little bit this last stretch. I just want to see, I think you need to see wins, but I don't think it matters how you win. I think it means that you do win. And I think if you can put 3-4 goals in, I know that's a lot considering how this team's played over the past couple of games, I think that would be a huge positive heading into Mason Cup.
I would love to see like a one-score game, or just only allowing one goal per game, because they went into Virginia and let up like 2 goals, a 1-goal game, and then 4 against USA Hockey. So just just a simple 1-goal game, win by a couple goals. I would just like to see one of those against like Superior State.
I think the number one thing I want to see is, okay, this is a big hedge bets thing, and you got to need a lot to happen, but the whole reason I'm on the show is for the hot take, so why not? I want to see a home playoff game locked up by the end of Friday night. I don't know. Well, I mean, if you crunch the numbers here, if St. Thomas lose, you like that. If St. Thomas lose and Bowling Green win, that would put them 5 points ahead, and then you can't fall behind St. Thomas at that point. So, I mean, honestly, if that happens, I'd be happy. And then after that, I wouldn't really mind what happens. Yeah. Would I like a win? Would I like both wins back to back? Yes. But if you win the first one, then you lose the second one. The momentum might drop off a little bit, but still, I think the team would be happy with that result.
Henry, to wrap things up here.
I think I agree with Lucas, and the main thing that I want to see is goals. It's been 3 games, 3 games that count since PG scored at least 3 goals dating back to Northern Michigan. That was beginning of February. But I'd just like to see a repeat of the results that they got against Lake Superior earlier in the year, 3-0 and 3-1. I think if you do that on the road, you should be able to do it at home. So just a repeat of that.
We will see how the hockey team fares as they face those 2 important games against Lake Superior State Friday and Saturday at Slater Family Ice Arena, 7 p.m. Not tips. I'm in basketball mode there.
You're a basketball guy, you.
7 p.m. puck drops for both of those at the Slater Family Ice Arena. Ben Korak will be on the call for both of those. I believe I'll be joining him Friday. I'm not sure who's joining Ben Saturday, Lucas.
I'm not sure either.
All right, we'll find out who joins Ben Saturday. So you'll have to tune in and listen.
Could it be me?
We'll have to tune in and listen.
I hope not.
Oh, my soccer buddy.
Not a real sport. What? No, I'm joking.
It's because you'll be too busy with Spring League, Lucas. Come on. Aren't you?
Is that happening this week? I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I think it is. I think it is.
Soccer beats everybody.
Lucas, how was the game yesterday? Did you go to the?
It didn't happen.
Oh, it didn't happen.
Well, that's a great look for Spring League.
It didn't happen. No, that was just a scrimmage. Spring League,
Athlete Institute FC.
Starting.
Come on.
No, it is starting. Spring League is starting Saturday, March 1st. They play at Akron. Men's soccer.
Yeah, keep an eye out for some of our coverage for that.
I love the Spring League.
Does that even... okay, genuinely, what is that? Does that even matter?
Preseason tournament.
That's it?
Yep, essentially.
Tyler's going to throw his head.
Essentially. Okay. Now, Chaz, we have to move on.
Who cares, though?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Soccer people. If you are a soccer person, keep an eye out for our coverage for that on bgfalconmedia.com. Now moving over, we still have softball, baseball to cover. We've got about 45 minutes left in the show if you are keeping track. Let's start off with softball. We've got Henry Costco here, one of our softball beats. Talk to us a little bit about softball's recent performances, Henry.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. There's really not much to be said about these games that they're playing this weekend. These games... these 3-4 tournaments that they're playing here are just kind of openers, just to feel feel the team out, see what lineups work, what sort of things you want to roll with as you get into MAC play. But 3 losses over the course of this weekend here. They're playing in the Norman tournament down at Love's Field, same field where Oklahoma won 4 straight national championships. They'll be taking them on Monday. I'll talk a bit more about that later. But a loss in game 1, 15-4 loss against Wichita State, opening it up. Wichita State, a team that had some success last year in the American, a team that should beat Bowling Green on paper. Morgan Beckham had a rough start in that one. Didn't quite get an out in the first inning. She got pulled for allowing 3 walks and a hit. Scarlett Anderson, although she did get out of that inning, didn't fare much better. 7 earned on 9 runs, 8 hits, only 1 strikeout in 2 2/3. And that one, and only 4 hits across the team for the Falcons, despite the 4 runs. So we saw some similar troubles. So maybe going back to what we saw last year, where trouble on both sides. Pitchers who can't quite hold the opposite team for more than a couple innings, couple at bats at a time, and then offense that just can't quite get going, can't quite get above the 5-6 run mark. And we saw that again in game 2 against Abilene Christian, a team that on paper we thought BG might have a bit more of a chance against, considering they were 1-8 coming into the game, despite beating the one team that they should be, East Texas A&M. But an 8-5 loss in game 2 there. All 5 runs were unearned for Ella Beeman, the Abilene Christian pitcher, who threw a complete game shutout, technically, even though they allowed 5 runs in that game. But another start from
that doesn't even sound like it's possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a game I wish I could have watched because there was no broadcast of it.
You wish you could have watched
that? Would have been. I mean, all the runs were scored on either errors or sack flies. That's what it takes to have.
That's great.
No earned runs.
So that's Henry's kind of softball game right there. Bad fielding.
Right, but that was another game where we saw another freshman pitcher. Sydney Marshall started that one. Beckham started game 1, but 2 innings. At least she got an out in her start in that game. 4 earned for Marshall, and one inning on 1 earned run for Scarlett Anderson in that game. So again, another loss, but this time they did put up 5 runs. So, a bit more of a positive result from that. And then the game today, a recap just got uploaded on OMBGFalconMedia.com. 7-0 loss to Tulsa in that one. 2 hits for Taylor Barrett in that one, with 1 hit for Hutter, Hunt, and Steffes. And then Beckham got the start in that one, where she allowed 4 earned on 2 1/3 innings pitched. But, I mean, it's a 7-0 loss. Not really much else to say there. And then they'll play 2 more coming up here tomorrow. One against Oklahoma, which is the big one. You can catch that on SEC Network Plus if you happen to have
what's the goal for that game
for Oklahoma?
How many innings are we looking to make it?
5.
Okay.
5 is probably what's going to happen.
What's the?
I mean, complete. Even finishing the game and playing all 7 innings would be exceeding expectations in this one.
Because Chaz, I'm trying to remember baseball against Tennessee last year, who won the College World Series. We got mercied every game.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I think it was.
I wrote those games.
I think we got run rolled every game. So, I mean, if they could avoid getting run rolled against the number 2 team in the country, 4-time defending champions on their home field.
Yeah, well,
what if they win?
I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, but I don't see much of a world where that happens. If you're getting blown out 7-0 by Tulsa the day before, what's going to happen when you take on number 2 undefeated Oklahoma Sooners? But it's a good experience for the team regardless. Playing a team like that
it's got to be a good experience them just being down there playing on that field the whole time.
Would that be the biggest win of all time?
You gotta believe.
You
gotta believe, Henry.
Oklahoma.
Believe.
Oklahoma is the back-to-back national championship winning softball team.
Who's currently undefeated number 2 in the country.
And
why are they?
But have they ever played Bowling Green though?
If they have, it hasn't been close. But
Also, we did get run ruled in every single game against Tennessee, but
That's what I thought.
in the first game, we did limp to 8 innings,
Yeah,
11-1.
I do remember that.
And then after that, it was 7-7. So
We'll see how far
Okay.
they can get. But what have you seen any positives out of the weekend? Has anyone stuck out to you? Some new players possibly that pleasantly surprised you, I guess.
Well, Hannah Hunt, Cameron Kaufman have had the 2 good weekends. Cameron Kaufman scored pretty much all of the runs in the game 1 against Wichita State. She had an RBI single in the first, RBI single in the third, and then she stole second and got herself in scoring position to eventually score herself for another run in that game. But she's up to hitting 304 on the season, 820 OPS so far, and only 23 ABs, of course. Hannah Hunt has had a fantastic couple games, earned a hit in each of those games, hitting 360 right now with a 906 OPS. One player that I was really excited to see coming in to the series was Addie Martin, but she's had a bit of a rough start. I don't believe she's earned a hit so far in these 3 games. She was hitting over 400 after the opening tournament in South Carolina, but she's down to 227 and with a 729 OPS. As far as pitching, there hasn't really been much good to say there. Pretty much all 4 main pitchers, Sydney Marshall, Scarlett Anderson, Krafchick, and Morgan Beckham, have not had great outings so far. Olivia Roth did have a solid outing, and I believe that was against Abilene Christian. She had a scoreless outing, but
I do think, though, Henry, that I think it's to be expected. I don't think they expect them to win these games.
That's what I was carrying that into my next point. They're 2-6 right now, but that doesn't really put them behind the ball, more or less, in the MAC. You look at some teams that they're going to be competing with. Buffalo started 1-4. Kent State is 3-11. Miami predicted second to finish second in the MAC is 3-9 right now. Central is 1-8. NIU's 3-6. Western's 3-6. So they're not really behind the ball. Playing these better teams with this tough schedule right now, just as a lot of other MAC teams are. And we're not really going to get, we'll be saying this over the next couple of weeks, we're not really going to get a good baseline of where they're going to be until we get towards, maybe the Indiana tournament in a couple of weeks and the opening Buffalo series coming up after that.
So what you're saying is we got to wait till conference play.
The classic. Wow. Wait till conference.
Are you trying to reclaim that joke?
That's such an inside joke.
I'm
half the audience.
We explained it on the last Zig Zone. So
well, Henry, and another thing, positives though, is there a player that has surprised you a little bit so far this season, or a player that you're looking forward to take a big step that fans don't know about yet this season?
Well, Addie Martin was that player that was going to come in here and really kind of make a difference and take this offense the next step after she only played 8 games in 2024 due to injury. But, we saw she had that great opening start, which is a really great hint as to the potential that she has as a player. And, with small sample size right now, we'll see what happens later on in the year here. But 5 hits so far on the season, and she plays great defense on the third base side over there. And these 2 freshman pitchers, I think, are really going to be interesting. We're going to see them really get reps. They're going to probably start the majority of games for Michelle Gardner here in these opening tournaments. And they'll get that experience. They'll get comfortable in that role, and we'll see how they mature in that role coming up here in these next couple games. It's Sydney Marshall and Morgan Beckham. Marshall with a 4.38 after she threw a really great start in the opening tournament against, I believe that was against Monmouth, their opening game, that she threw 7 innings of 1 earned ball there. And Morgan Beckham has a 10.89 right now, but we saw a couple of cases in the opening weekend where she was just left in a bit too long, and she had that again this weekend. So, again, we'll see what happens with her.
One more for me. You talked about Addie Martin a lot. Is there a couple other players that you're looking to see if they can get something going here soon that have been struggling out of the gates that you were hoping wouldn't?
Delaney Davis is a big one who has struggled out of the gate, only hitting 110 at-bats, but she hasn't really gotten the run due to her having that tough start here to start the season. But overall, Hannah Massaro, she did have that opening home run in the upstate tournament, but she's had another one who's had kind of a rough tournament here. Hitless once again, 2 for 19 right now in these 2 tournaments. And the 2 catchers, Ashley Chevalier and Ava McKee through 22 at-bats combined are both hitless. So you want to see them start to get going. But another player is that transfer that I remember we talked about a couple weeks ago, Kendall Matthews, coming out of Lakeland College. She's one who we'll see how much run she gets towards this year, but only 6 at-bats and hitless for her. So just some players to watch there as the season progresses.
All right, well, good stuff on the softball team. And now going over to baseball, team that's really gotten out of the gates pretty hot this season. They did have a result that wasn't the brightest here today, Chaz. But can you just talk a little bit about this baseball team that we've been following pretty closely here this season?
Oh, yeah. So Bowling Green, so they started the season up on a loss against Middle Tennessee State. Then they won 4 straight. So they beat MTSU twice. And then now, this past week, they head over to I didn't know it was called this, the Palmetto State, which is, the palmetto is like a palm tree.
Chaz, can you just talk about baseball?
Oh, you look like a palm tree, Chaz.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't know you guys hated palm trees.
I'm going to be honest.
I love palm trees.
I zoned out for like a minute, and then I just hear Chaz talking about palm trees. I had no idea what was going on.
And now Tyler's interested. He's checking out what a palmetto is. This is what the Zig Zone's all about.
I will say it's a cool fact.
Well, I'm just going to give you that palm trees aren't actually trees.
Oh.
They're herbs.
Okay, dude.
Who in their right mind calls it a palm herb instead of a palm tree?
Well, no. The name, it's just we call them palm trees, but they're not actually trees.
Only you would one-up me in obscure facts.
That's true.
Tyler.
Yeah, that is
So
true.
anyway, Bowling Green, they head to the Palmetto State, South Carolina, and on Friday they take on USC Upstate. USC Upstate, they were 1-3 when they played. Falcons 3-1, and Falcons just take a convincing win, 5-2. It was a different style of game in that one, much more of a slowed down, focus on your pitching. We saw Landon Williman come out of the gate and be the starting pitcher. It was something that you and I, Tyler, found a little interesting, that he was the day one guy. When we saw Nick Good open the series in the opening weekend. But yeah, as a whole, pitching was solid. And then that game really came down to the big swing moments. I'd say USC Upstate honestly outpitched Bowling Green, but the big thing was the Falcons just got those quick, easy, big hits, and we saw that happen a couple times. TJ Tackett's grounded into a double play, but he scored. He had the opening RBI, and then we saw Brady Birchmeyer be Brady Birchmeyer yet again and have a big double that scored TJ Tackett's. And then the big score at the end of the game was Cooper McKenzie, when everything was tied 2-2. We saw Gavin Gannon having a tough time. He gets plugged out, and in comes Cooper McKenzie as a pinch hitter, and he homers. He sends it 3 RBIs, 5-2 victory. Then against Presbyterian, very interesting stat line on Saturday. They had 17 singles. Not any other hit was more than a single, and because of that, the Falcons do win 11-4 against Presbyterian. We saw Nick Good be credited with the win. And as a whole, again, no DJ Newman. And here's a spoiler. No DJ Newman on the weekend. That was interesting. But Nick Good, in 5 innings, he allowed...
No DJ Newman pitching. He was still hitting in the lineup.
He was still hitting. He was Shohei without the arm, if you will. So just a regular batter. But a very good batter. And so Nick Good allowed 7 hits, 3 runs. All 3 were earned in a walk with 5 strikeouts. He had a pretty solid outing. And then today, the game that I've been trying to stall not talking about, Falcons do get thumped in a rematch against USC Upstate 9-2. And in this game, it was just tough. Jacob Turner credited with the loss. And it's just one of those games. I didn't watch it super close, I'm going to be honest with you. But Turner starts, pitched 3 innings. He allowed 5 hits, 5 runs, 2 were earned. He opened the first inning with 3 unearned runs, and you just can't let that happen. He did have 4 strikeouts, though, so not the worst through 3 innings.
I saw Sam Seidel, Caden Parker both committing errors there, allowing some of those runs.
But still, you can't have that happen And especially against a USC Upstate team that towards the bottom of their conference last year, they're expected to be right around there. But they recorded 2 straight victories. They won yesterday and then they won today. So they're 3-3. Falcons are 4-2. Things are looking up for the Spartans and the Falcons. I don't think this is anything to worry about. They do have to wait a full week to play again, though, because by some form of
Mother Nature,
whatever you want to call it, yeah, they lost out on a second straight Tuesday game due to weather. So that's a little interesting. But yeah, Falcons still look great throughout the first 2 series of the season.
Yeah, it is now official. Both websites are showing it. That Butler game on Tuesday. I believe we had a promo play not too long ago about that.
Like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I was supposed to be on the call with Henry for that one, so do not tune in to WBGU 88.1 on Tuesday at 3 p.m. for that game, because it will not be happening. But with this baseball team, you mentioned Brady Birchmeier. He's been such a big piece of the early season success for the Falcons, Chaz. 10 RBI right now for Brady Birchmeier. That leads this team. Last time I checked, it was tops in the MAC. I don't know if anyone has passed him on that yet. I don't have that pulled up here. But, I mean, one knock we had on Brady last year was the average, the contact. And, he didn't get fully consistent at bats as a freshman, but 308 batting average for him, still very early on. But 10 ribbies here early, slugging 615 is pretty impressive from Brady.
Oh, yeah, and I think the thing about him, too, he's big. That's the one thing about Brady Birchmeier. 6'3", 242 pounds. This is a big dude. He's got home run potential. And just a sophomore, he was a redshirt freshman last year. He's got a lot of time that he is going to be balling out for the Falcons. I can see with how dominant he's been. Now, this is way down the line, but this could be a guy that gets drafted late. He's very good. He's a big slugger. And you mentioned 10 RBIs. His clutch time is really what got me, where against Middle Tennessee State, he had a big 3-run home run to put them above Middle Tennessee State, take them into extra innings. And then that double he had in the first game against USC Upstate was so dominant. So, yeah, Brady Birchmeier has been such a surprise for me. And
I do have a quote on Brady, Chaz, if you'd like to hear it from Halleck.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
This was in our Athlete of the Week on the BG News, and I believe it was also in Tyler's bullpen bulletin, actually.
It was.
This first week. So this is what Halleck said about Brady. He said, Brady Birchmeier has taken everything he's worked on in the offseason and implemented it right into the beginning of our season. His approach at the plate and the consistency of his at-bats led to his big-time performance at the plate. He also played an outstanding first base this weekend and is becoming a complete baseball player. I am very happy for him. So that's pretty high praise for Halleck. Exactly.
Tyler, how'd you get an entire crowd to fit in the WBGU studio?
Magician never tells his secrets, Chaz. Something else I wanted to touch on here, too, is something that's always fun watching is how Kyle Halleck figures out all these lineups.
Yeah.
He's made a couple moves that I want to see. I want to get your thoughts on here. Something he did a couple games ago was... we know Garrett Wright is not going to catch every single game. It's so tough to be a catcher game in, game out. You need to give their bodies a rest, and especially early in the season to preserve them. He moved Garrett Wright to an outfield position multiple times here. One of these, he's been playing some left field. One of these specific games, he put, I believe it was McKenzie behind the plate. He put Zach Corky in left field, and he put Garrett Wright in right field. He had 3 catchers starting in the field for a game. And, of course, you have DJ DHing. Another move that he made was we had Sam Seidel struggling top of the order. Guy that we all, I think, saw that he was going to be the leadoff guy to start this year with his on-base percentage. Just seems to be struggling a little bit, adjusting to the pressure of being the leadoff guy. I don't think we're too worried about that just yet. But Gunnar Antillian stepped up, so Halleck moved Seidel down to 6th in the lineup, moved Antillian down from the lower third up to the leadoff spot, and that's worked out for both of those guys in these couple games. So just your thoughts there on those couple of interesting but intriguing lineup decisions and fielding decisions by Halleck.
Yeah, so let me try to digest that terabyte of data you just gave me. So starting off with the catcher moves, I think it's really interesting because we've talked about this a lot. If you put Wright in an outfield position, we saw what Cooper McKenzie can do. Him coming in for Gavin Gannon saved the game in the late 9th inning against USC Upstate on Friday. If you can have Garrett Wright, who is absolutely, he mashes the ball, and also he's very reliable to get on base. You have him, you have McKenzie with his home run potential. McKenzie's a pure slugger. He is a baller. And then I don't know so much about Horky. I think it's better.
Horky definitely seems to me a very similar player to Cooper McKenzie.
Yeah.
They definitely seem very similar in the way that I don't think they're going to be crazy high average people, but they are going to have that slugging ability, those two guys. So, I mean, Halleck's got 3 catchers there to play with.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about that, first and foremost. I think the fact that you have 3 reliable catchers, I know there were some worries about if Garrett Wright had the accuracy to make the throw from at home plate to second base, and we saw in practices it looks like his arm's getting a lot stronger. Do you want to preserve him for those big MAC games that you know are coming down the line? MAC Freshman of the Year, might I add. This is a guy that is one of the top players in Bowling Green's roster already as just a sophomore. So to preserve him in games which we've mentioned before, these games matter in building your team, but they do not matter in making the postseason, because the MAC is forever and always, unless something changes with money and everything like that, the MAC is a one-bid league.
Yeah, it hasn't changed since, I want to say, I did some crunching numbers. I think it was 70s or 80s. Maybe 90s was the last time you had a 2-bid conference in the MAC.
And that's never going to change. So you want to be, and we saw it last year, Bowling Green had the best season you could argue of program history as recently as
definitely one of the best.
It was one of the best. The amount of records broken, the amount of individual success, not just team success, was off the charts. And the program got a lot of love just a couple of years after being dissolved for about a month. But I think the big thing now is that we're seeing just, I don't know, the amount of success is something that I wanted to keep an eye on, and you have to sustain it. In the MAC tournament, the Falcons ended up just injuries stacked up. We saw Tyler Ross got hurt late when he was dealing with injuries that were going under the radar, but that ended up costing them. And because of that, you can't afford to lose your top players early. DJ Newman, he remind me, was he out of the batting order, or was he back in the batting order by the MAC tournament?
Yeah, he didn't play in the MAC tournament.
That's
was
what I thought.
fully out.
I couldn't remember if it was just a pitching role, but yeah, no, you're right. He was completely out. So you lose a bunch of guys.
I want to say he even missed like the last 15, 17 games of the season in a full capacity because of 2 injuries back-to-back for Newman, one that knocked him out of pitching and the other one that knocked him out fully of hitting.
And we thought that there might be a chance he'd come back just to hit, and that didn't happen. But what I'm just trying to say here is, I'm starting to ramble, is that I think that the fact that you are preserving your talent on this team, you're kind of figuring out how things work, and you're succeeding as well. You're not just getting beat up and chewed up and spat out. You're winning games while also tuning up your lineup. That is tremendously impressive. The fact that you had Sam Seidel up in, he was the leadoff. He really did struggle, but that didn't matter because you had guys like Birchmeyer. You had DJ Newman getting doubles. Gavin Gannon stepping in. He had a great series, then a not-so-great series. These guys are stepping up. All the way down the lineup, it's a roster full of just dudes, genuinely. Every single one of them can answer the call, and the fact that you're tuning everything up and you're on the road, you don't really know what you've got yet, and it's showing up and showing out like the team that you had last year. Even, I mean, pitching, I think, is even a little bit better, and we haven't even seen DJ Newman yet. I think batting will come. It'll be a little bit slower, I think, than last year. I mean, losing Nathan Archer, losing Tyler Ross, 2 of the big guys, Jack Krause even, a lot of your big batters. Roki as well, up, Banjoff. I mean, we could go on and on. But, yeah, I think tuning everything up, getting everything ready, and you're looking strong. You're 4-2, and you've got some very big games coming up before you get to MAC play. I'm very excited.
Yeah, and you touched on the pitching there a little bit. Pitching definitely got out to a slower start this season. They've bounced back a little bit in the past couple games, especially the starting pitching. We're still waiting on Newman. Fully expect him to be back as a starter at some point. We'll see how long that takes. Who stuck out to you pitching-wise? Either guys that have excelled and done better than you thought they would start of the season, or some guys that are slower out of the gates that you're going to want to see them get back into some form here in the next couple of appearances?
That's a good question. I think right now, a guy that I'm actually very excited about, Owen Poole. We saw Owen Poole come out of the bullpen as a leverage guy with an inning left to go in a tied, or you had the lead, but it was tied just before USC Upstate tried to answer on that Friday game, and he allowed a hit, but he had 2 strikeouts, and the hit was a ground out. So it was one of those situations where I'd take it, or the hit wasn't a ground out, but he allowed a hit, and then he had a ground out later. But, yeah, I'm really excited about Poole. I think somebody that I was high on Ty Roeder last week. I saw a little too much contact out of him in that Friday game. That was something that worried me just a little bit. Didn't allow a walk, though, so I was excited about that. But, yeah, as a whole, Owen Poole, I was excited. Connor Penrod also is another closeout guy. Excited about that. The Penn God.
Dude, 2023 Connor Penrod, legend.
I mean,
he's definitely looked
flashes.
closer to that than he has last year's version.
Oh, yeah.
6-2 strikeout ratio right now, 3-1 if you divide that down. A lot better ratio than he was working with last year, which was the main problem for him, that control. I agree with you on the Owen Poole. Carson Silva, I think we've seen more of him than we expected to see. He's had a mix of good and bad. He's still a freshman, though.
I have one that I have been disappointed with.
Yeah.
Nick Good.
Yeah, Nick Good's been a little slow.
And so he gets absolutely rocked. And, I mean, no offense to Nick Good. He's a very good pitcher. And we saw it last year. He was good. Some might say he's good. I'd say he's great. But Nick Good against Presbyterian allowed 7 hits, 3 runs, all were earned, a walk. He did have 5 strikeouts. But as a whole, I think it's really a tough situation for him. He gets rocked 18-0 against Middle Tennessee State to open the year. Obviously, he didn't allow all those runs, but you know what I'm saying. Like they set the tone against him, and then he
did give up, if I remember correctly, 5 though in that first inning, which was just a little wake up call. I don't know how concerned you are with him, but
I'm not concerned.
Yeah, because
it's just tough to see him rocked so early, rocked back to back as well.
I will say there's a few things that stick out to me that I'm not crazy concerned with. Is he's not walking a ton of guys yet. He's given up 4 walks in 8 1/3, which is a little high. But you do have to remember these are his first couple games pitching outside to live hitters this season.
Mm-hmm.
The extra base hits have been a little troubling. 5 extra base hits in 8 1/3 innings, 4 doubles and a homer. And opponents batting .389 off of him. Those are slightly concerning numbers.
Well, also, I think something that's not always talked about too is situational. Because I mean, you can talk about statistics, and I think, Tyler, that's why when we have a broadcast, we bounce off each other very well, because you're more the stats guy, I'm more the story guy. And if you look at when Nick Good was in the game against Presbyterian, the final score of that game was 11-4, but at the end of the 5th inning, it was 6-3. And, I mean, bats were awake. The Falcons, they could run the offense up against Presbyterian, but Nick Good allowed all but 1 of those runs. And, yes, I think it was 1, 2, 3. They are allowed runs, one in the first, and then in the 4th and the 5th. So
they didn't have any multi-run innings.
As the arm deteriorated, you could tell that they were starting to figure out Good a little bit more. But I think I think as a whole, it's just not something I'd like to see as the guy that started the first game of the year and as a guy that I think we expect to be the Saturday starter. It's a little difficult, and as a senior stepping up into a leadership role, it's a little bit too slow of a start for me. But again, I think this is a guy whose potential, and I think I said this on the last show as well, at the end of the season, he will be first-team All-MAC. He has that upside, and I think he can do it.
We will have to wait and see how he does the rest of the season to see if he hits that mark. Good stuff on all of our sports today. We'll take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with a little bit of discussion. So I'm gonna wait till after the break. I'll pitch that discussion to you guys, keep you guys on your toes. So you're listening to the Zig Zone here on WBGU 88.1 FM.
BGSU Women's Tennis heads to Chicago bright and early to battle UIC on Sunday, February 23rd at 10 a.m. Check out Falcon Media Sports Network's Carter Leonard's recap on bgfalconmedia.com.
Falcon Women's Tennis face off against Valparaiso on Saturday, February 22nd at 2 p.m. Check out Falcon Media Sports Network's Foster Rossi's recap on bgfalconmedia.com.
Back here on the Zig Zone, WBGU 88.1 FM. We have gone over our sports for today with BGSU Athletics. We covered men's basketball, worked our way over to women's basketball and hockey, and wrapped up with softball and baseball. But before we go off the airwaves, we do have a discussion question to talk around here. So the one for today that I had, I was talking with Holden Ruck about this one, and we both brought up the Four Nations face-off that was wildly popular in replacing the All-Star Weekend this year for the NHL. Got some of the most views the NHL's ever gotten. So I'm going to pose to you guys, if you could pick any of the major sports, I'll include MLS, so we'll go NBA, MLB.
So you're going 5.
We'll go 5.
Okay.
The major 4 North American sports leagues and MLS. Pick one of those and give me a change or two that you would like to see in their All-Star weekends.
I think I got one.
Go ahead, Artie.
All right, for the NBA. All right, this is an idea I just came up with just now, like right now. So for the NBA,
breaking news.
So All-Star Weekend, we all know it's not great. Obviously, it just you watch it and it just kind of. So my idea is we take all the All-Stars, we split them up into teams, like different teams, like not like how we usually do, like how you have the East and West Side, or you do the voting. You take them up, you put them in like groups, or you have 4 players. Pick certain players, and then they do a tournament style thing, like so 4 teams, and do a tournament,
like Game of 21 or something.
Yeah, like that. So then it's a little more fun than just like guys playing on one side, guys playing on the other side. Do you
think guys would do that and actually do it competitively?
Probably not. It probably still wouldn't be competitive, but it would at least be more interesting to watch than just them running back and forth doing dunks for 45 minutes.
Now, can I go next? Because I got
no. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, because I have another NBA. I think what I would like to see them do is either A, go to Europe and have their All-Star game in Paris, and do USA versus Europe in Paris.
That'd
just because the basketball environments in Europe are so much better than anything the NBA can ever produce. And although it wouldn't be like that in Paris, it would still be, I think, better than the All-Star environments that we have.
I don't know, Henry. I don't know if they have the funding for that. I don't have the money for that.
They don't have the money for that.
That's a great idea.
We do a
And-
fundraiser.
And then the other idea I had was do something similar to where they play on an aircraft carrier in college basketball, but do that for the All-Star game.
I love both
but
of those ideas.
They can't do that in the winter. Maybe do it in Cali or something like
Sure,
that.
you
but
can. Just ship them out to Hawaii.
Adam
on the
Silver,
aircraft
give him
carrier.
a call now.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be awesome.
If anyone knows Adam Silver's number, just send over to Henry Costco.
But like I feel like that should be what the All-Star games are. It should just be like a giant publicity stunt. They shouldn't even try to
the
like
NFL
halfway do
kinda
it.
used to do that with the Hawaii games.
Yeah.
like that was
Like-
kind of cool.
Like why not just try to do something stupid and just to get as many eyes on it as possible?
Yeah.
Because that's the whole point
That's
of it in
fair.
the first place.
All right, Chaz Lucas, who's going next?
Want me to go, Chaz, or you?
I don't have a good one yet, so you keep
Okay,
going.
I don't really have one. I mean, I wasn't going to go MLS till you brought it up because I don't think people know enough about it, so I'm not going to include it, but they should go East versus West. The one I did have...
All right, Chaz, your turn.
Oh.
No.
The one I did... I think the NFL needs to do... They have to make it... I don't... Like... AFC, they've done everything with Pro Bowl. They've done AFC versus NFC. They've done randomized. They've done like Deion Sanders versus like other.
They've done Peyton and Eli against each other.
And that's cool. But like at the end of the day, the players aren't trying because they don't want to get hurt. I think you got to have some sort of stakes with it. You got to make it prideful in some way. Like you got to go like old players versus new players, rookies versus like non-rookies. Like I think if you do that, people would care more.
That's kind of sick.
Well,
like, otherwise, I mean, like, because like, they're not going to try. They're just not going to try because they don't get hurt. There's too much money involved.
I'm kind of mad at you because I did have one, and you built off of it. No, so you play a game, right? You don't have to do helmets. You can make it flag. I think whatever, just make it like a football game. I think the skills competition isn't the most fun thing in the world, but I will say this: you make it defense versus offense, offensive players playing defense. And
wouldn't that lead to more injuries?
What?
Well, it's not like
if I saw
who's
Burrow
QB?
as a strong safety, I would lose my mind.
in a good way. You'd lose it in a good
No, he's
way.
got lower his shoulder and dislocate it.
Well, no, it's not like tackle. You can make it flat.
Okay, but if you do that, you're just going to have like linebackers playing quarterback and then just doing scrambles for 45 minutes.
But couldn't you imagine Tyreek Hill at cornerback?
This is what you do. You just put a bunch of money involved. It's like a $10 million cash prize. You win the game, you get $10 million each. If that's what you do, so they try.
If we're really going that far in depth, you know what I want to see for All-Star Weekend?
What?
You put the Browns versus the Titans, full game, number 1 overall pick
Why
on the
would you do
line.
that?
Number one pick on the line.
Guys aren't going to try on that either.
No, that would be awesome.
Players aren't going to try on that either. They're going to play for an
They
organization.
would 100% play for that.
Before I pitch mine, let me get your guys' take on this as we have a few minutes left. Would you guys? How mad would you be if sports leagues just got rid of All-Stars?
I don't care.
No,
I wouldn't.
they can keep.
Not mad at all.
I wouldn't care.
If
Okay.
they can keep the All-Star
That's interesting.
nomination, if they got rid of the game, I wouldn't.
That's
be mad.
interesting.
Honestly, like I'd rather watch them have like a cooking show together, or watch them
Play
go
one
on a
video
trip.
games?
Because I'm gonna be honest, I do not care about any of the All-Star weekends.
Didn't the NFL do that in COVID?
They did.
They
It was
did
a
Madden.
Madden game in
Madden.
COVID.
And
It was really funny.
I was tapped in. I just don't care about a flag football game with Eli and Peyton. That's the only fun draw of it. I think it just doesn't matter. And NBA players aren't going to play. The Four Nations is sick, but that's the only one that people care about.
So I'm going to end mine with two parts here. I think, one, the NHL should 100% keep the Four Nations and replace their All-Star weekend with it. I think a cool thing would be like the lowest finishing country gets swapped out the next year, and you bring in a different country or something like that. And I'm also old school, so for baseball, I want the home run derby to go back to 10 outs. I'm tired of this time stuff. I think there's too many home runs being hit. I don't think it's as fun and special anymore. Go back to 10 outs, make it about the skill, make it dramatized, and bring back Chris Berman on the broadcast.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
You know, that would be
Back, on!
that would be awesome. What about like a hot
Great
dog eating
impression.
contest?
What was that?
Hot dog eating
for which
contest.
All-Star break?
Joey would dominate.
Yeah.
Bring
What
Joey
if
in.
Joey Chestnut
like
versus
All-Stars versus Joey?
Matt Stoney.
Joey
Yeah.
Get Matt Stoney on there. He'll do
Joey's
something.
going to destroy him.
What about instead of an all-star, you have the fall stars, and it's just the worst players going up against each other in a game? Like you have like Bronny James versus Mac McClung, and it's like, I think that would get that.
I don't think there's much they can fix because it's just about money, and they don't want to get hurt, and the owners don't want to get hurt.
And NBA is the worst with it too because they don't care whatsoever.
Yeah, even the dunk contest sucks now in the NBA.
It's all a money scheme in the end. Well, that'll about do it for us here on the Zig Zone today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, we will have another show next Sunday, same time, 4 to 6 p.m. Holden Ruck will be back in my seat with a rotating cast. We'll see who's back on the show next week. You'll have to tune in to listen. I want to thank everyone for coming on. Lucas Kleinmeyer, Artie Abrego, Chaz McNeil, and Henry Costco. Be sure to check out all of Falcon Media Sports Network and BG Falcon Media's outlets. You can go to Twitter X at BG_FMSN. Go to the BG Falcon Media YouTube channel and go ahead and check out bgfalconmedia.com. That'll about do it for us. So for Henry Costco, Chaz McNeil, Artie Abrego, Lucas Kleinmeyer, this is Tyler Kavlitz saying have a great day, everybody.
Interested in joining Falcon Media Sports Network? If you're looking to get involved, send an email to sports@bgfalconmedia.com.